They weren't supposed to be here. High Chancellor Draville, a serpent-skinned diplomat from the Jalan Core worlds, tapped his claws nervously on the glowing council desk. "What is the meaning of this arrival?" he hissed. "Humanity," came the answer, from a small, silver-skinned ambassador near the edge. His voice trembled despite the cold calmness of his race. "They've entered council space. Officially." No one spoke for several seconds. Then the air shifted, panic masked by protocol. "They were years away from reaching the qualifying standard for first contact," Draville growled. "They still engage in primitive internal conflict. Their biosphere is unstable. Their leadership structure is laughably chaotic." "Yet here they are," another whispered, "with a ship none of our archives can explain. A ship that made the jump through Omega Rift without burning." That was supposed to be impossible. Even ancient Federation tech failed at that. The rift was a death trap. A black crack in space filled with gravitational pulses and radiation bursts powerful enough to snap a battleship in half like dry bone. "They call it Dauntless," said the ambassador, his voice carrying that odd human word with weight. "No escort, no fleet, just one ship. And one man. One man. Every species in that chamber, beings with wings, gills, scales, fur, and pure energy, processed that in stunned silence." "What kind of man?" Draville asked finally. The ambassador just looked up, eyes dead still. "The kind who speaks for all of them." The doors opened. They weren't ready for him. He wasn't armored in ceremonial metals like the Vlan war priests. He didn't glow like the Archeans or wear gene pearls like the Zivali nobles. He walked in wearing simple black tactical gear, boots heavy, shoulders square, and jaw set like someone who'd been through hell and hadn't quite left it behind. He didn't bow. He didn't ask permission. He walked straight to the center platform, meant only for high representatives. "Name," Draville snapped, recovering his voice. "Commander Ren Marlo," the man said. His voice didn't carry like a diplomat's. It cut like a blade. Calm, but lethal. "What gives you the right to appear before the council unannounced?" Another counselor barked. "I'm not here to ask for a seat," Ren said. "I'm here to issue a warning." That made the room shift. Some scoffed. Others narrowed their eyes. No one dared speak yet. Ren stood still for a moment longer. Then he placed a small orb on the pedestal. It shimmered with a deep red pulse. "You wanted to evaluate Earth. You studied us from afar, ran simulations, assumed we'd break, kneel, or beg to be uplifted." He looked directly at Draville. "But none of you really understood what we are." The orb flickered, then unleashed a hologram. Footage. Wars. Cities on fire. Humans in trenches, charging tanks with nothing but rifles. Men and women dragging themselves through dust and blood. One soldier shouting as he fired into overwhelming alien beasts, holding them back with rage alone. A dying medic tying off someone's artery with his own uniform. A father burying his son, then walking back into battle. The room darkened. Ren's voice dropped lower. "We are what happens when the universe forgets mercy." The silence that followed was like gravity collapsing. One of the elder counselors stood slowly. "Are you threatening us?" Ren met his eyes. "Number, I'm telling you that if you think you can fold Earth into your empire, bribe us with technology, or control us with bureaucracy, you'll break first. We're done being watched like animals. The door you opened?" He gestured behind him. "It doesn't close anymore." He stepped back. The orb powered down. The council had seen empires rise and fall. They'd seen rebellions, plagues, even planetary suicide. but none of them had ever seen a species that smiled through extinction and came back for more. Ren Marlo turned, just as silent as when he arrived. Before leaving, he paused, looked over his shoulder, and said one last thing. "We're not asking for a place in your world. We're here to build our own." And then he was gone. But the silence he left behind was louder than any weapon. Nobody moved after Commander Ren Marlo left the chamber. The doors hissed shut behind him, and it felt like the whole damn council had just been slapped across the face. Not by weapons, not by war declarations, but by raw, brutal truth. Draville stared ahead, mouth slightly open, gills pulsing too fast. That human, that thing, had spoken to the most powerful beings in the galaxy like they were insects circling a fire. And the worst part? He hadn't been wrong. The Jalan Chancellor rose slowly from his coiled position and turned to face the inner circle of council lords. "This cannot stand. Earth is not ready. Humanity is not stable. We've studied them. Their species is emotionally volatile, prone to violence. Do you understand what it would mean to grant them free access to council space?" "They already have access," someone muttered. "They crossed the Omega Rift. That's supposed to be impossible." "No," said a low, gravel-voiced counselor from the Skarn Dominion. He was all bone and muscle, from a warrior race known for never showing fear. But even he didn't sound confident. "It wasn't supposed to be possible yet." Another voice, soft and trembling, added, "What if we're too late? What if they're already inside our systems, our networks?" Panic buzzed beneath the surface of protocol. "They've likely only sent a single scout. We should capture him immediately," said Draville. "Capture?" someone else scoffed. "He walked into the Concord Hall alone, through our lockdowns, through our security. You think he came here without a plan?" They were spiraling. Meanwhile, Ren Marlo walked back through the central corridor of the Galactic Core like he owned the place. He didn't glance sideways. Didn't look at the security drones hovering above. Didn't flinch when alien guards stared daggers at him. He didn't need to. Everything he'd said in that chamber had been deliberate. Every word, every pause, every moment of silence. Not because he was a diplomat. He wasn't. He'd been trained in the mud, not a university. Learned to speak by watching men bleed and trying to stop them long enough to say goodbye. He walked like a man who knew he was being watched. Because he was. As he turned the corner into the council docking ring, a young tech, blue-skinned, thin arms, trembling voice, met him with a stuttered sentence. You can't just... Your ship isn't cleared for departure." Ren didn't stop. "Then shoot me." The tech blinked. "What?" "I said shoot me if you think I'm a threat, if you think I shouldn't be walking out of here." He paused. "Otherwise move." The tech moved. Dauntless was waiting. The ship didn't look like much at first glance. No sleek curves like Archean cruisers. No gleaming alloys like Zavali trade vessels. Just heavy black plating, thick armor, brutal design. It looked like it had been built by people who didn't give a damn about elegance. Because they hadn't. The hangar lights flickered as he approached. The ship seemed to hum. Not with power, but with purpose. No crew, just Ren. That was all it needed. Inside, he stepped onto the bridge, dropped into the captain's chair, and keyed the console with a 6-digit code. The system came online instantly. "Status?" he muttered. A female voice responded, calm, synthetic, but not cold. "Council presence detected. Tracking drones following you. 42 surveillance attempts in the last 30 minutes. Shields at 87%. Omega core still stable." "Good," Ren said. They took the bait. Back in the council chambers, chaos had finally broken through the glass. "This is no longer a diplomatic concern," snapped Draville. tail coiling in tight loops. "This is a military threat. I demand we initiate containment protocol." "You mean war," another said. "I mean security," Draville spat. "They sent one man. What happens when they send 10,000? But others weren't so sure. "He didn't threaten us," said the Archean delegate, her golden face unreadable. "He warned us." "There's no difference." "There is. A threat is meant to provoke. A warning is what you give someone before you strike." They went back and forth like this. Politics layered on fear, wrapped in old grudges and outdated arrogance. But underneath it all, something deeper had begun to take root. Doubt. Because humans weren't supposed to be there, and yet here they were. They had crossed the Omega Rift. They had arrived with technology no one had seen before. And most dangerous of all? They hadn't come begging. They hadn't even come angry. They'd come ready. Ren was already halfway back to Earth by the time the Council decided to respond. They sent a ship, one of the newer class recon interceptors, fast, well-armed, and crewed by species specifically trained to handle unpredictable primitives. Inside that ship, Commander Ethra leaned back in his pilot seat and scoffed at the reports. "Human?" he said to his second-in-command, a soft-boned thinker species with wide, glassy eyes. "One man walks in, and now they're all scared like hatchlings. Typical Council cowards." They said he activated a Class 6 psi weapon in the chamber, projected emotional trauma directly into the minds of over 60 delegates. Ethra laughed. "Yeah, that's what I'd do too if I was losing my nerve." They approached the Dauntless's last known coordinates. It was just floating there, in the black. No power signature, no visible crew, no weapons online. "Scan it." The tech did. Frowned. "No life forms detected." "What?" "Ship's empty." "That's impossible. Where the hell is the pilot?" Before anyone could answer, the lights in their own ship flickered. Then everything went dead. "Systems offline!" the pilot shouted. "We're being boarded!" It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't weapons. It was Dauntless. The entire human ship had infiltrated their systems, shut them down from the inside, not with brute force, but with code. Elegant, brutal, terrifyingly simple code. A voice echoed through the comms. Ren's voice. "First lesson. You don't see us coming." Then silence. When the Council recovered the ship days later, they found the entire crew unconscious. No injuries. No deaths. But each of them had been left a message, burned into the wall of the command room in some kind of alloy none of their scanners could even identify. It said, "This is mercy. Next time we take the whole ship." Back on Earth, in the mountain-locked command bunker buried beneath Colorado ice, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Ren stood at the head of the table, surrounded by generals, scientists, and off-the-books operatives who had no names and even less patience. "We made contact," Ren said simply. "It worked." "Good," one of the generals replied. "And?" "They're rattled. They'll come at us with charm first. Treaties, tech offers, maybe even the illusion of partnership. But the truth is, they've already labeled us a threat." "Then let's be one," the man beside him said. Ren didn't smile. He didn't believe in false pride. But he nodded. "They've watched us die 1,000 different ways from afar, but they've never watched what happens when we stop dying and start fighting back." Another scientist leaned in. "And Dauntless?" "Still functioning. The Omega Core's stable, but we need to limit jumps. It's rewriting space-time signatures as it moves. We're not entirely sure what side effects it's causing." "You mean we're still not sure what it is?" another said quietly. "We didn't build it, not really. We just found pieces, patched it together, gave it purpose." Ren didn't argue. He knew the truth. Humanity hadn't invented Omega Drive tech. They'd pulled it from wreckage that no other species had dared touch. Wreckage buried in a gravity well 3 clicks deep into dead space. The kind of place you only find when you're desperate or insane, which was exactly how they'd gotten it. Now it was working. And now, for the first time in galactic history, the apex predators weren't the ones in charge. Back in Council space, emergency meetings were scheduled every 3 hours. Species that hadn't spoken in decades were suddenly holding joint sessions. Security systems were updated, fleet formations reconfigured, warnings sent to all outer colonies. The threat wasn't confirmed, but it was understood. And in quiet rooms behind locked doors, old empires whispered something they hadn't said in generations. Maybe it's time we put Earth down. But they didn't know Earth. They didn't know what desperation had made of mankind, what it meant to build cities out of ruins, to lose everything and keep going anyway. They hadn't seen the face of a human man bury his son, then build a rocket with the same hands. They didn't understand what kind of species turns extinction into fuel. Ren Marlo was one man. But behind him stood a planet full of ghosts, fighters, builders, and madmen who had looked into the black and decided to punch it in the throat. The council thought they were at the top. They didn't realize the storm had just landed. The outer colonies of the council lit up like alarm beacons. Fleet movements ramped up. Civilian travel was restricted near the neutral corridors. Propaganda systems quietly began spinning a new narrative. Earth was unstable, unpredictable, and needed supervision. They didn't say the word containment publicly, but it was on every delegate's tongue in private. The real question wasn't if humanity was a threat. It was whether that threat could be neutralized. High Chancellor Draville stood in his private chamber overlooking the city orbit of Zalkar Prime. His slit eyes focused on the data feed streaming across the holoscreen. Surveillance footage, military intelligence reports, intercepted human signals. They had it all. But none of it told him how Ren Marlo had done it. One ship, one man, an infiltration that bypassed 6 defense grids, and a message so clear even the most delusional optimists in the council had shut up. Draville clenched his claws behind his back. "They're playing with something they barely understand," he hissed aloud. A voice spoke from the shadows. "And what if they do understand it?" The Chancellor turned slowly. His informant was there, cloaked in black cloth, features hidden. A council spy, part of a class trained since hatchlinghood in extraction and manipulation. He was expensive, and that alone meant he was dangerous. "What do you mean?" Draville asked. The figure stepped forward. "I've read every intercepted human transmission since the Dauntless incident. They know what they're doing. They're not experimenting. They're testing, slowly, carefully, and they're watching who watches them." Draville didn't like the sound of that. "Then it's time we respond." The figure tilted his head. "With war?" "With a scalpel," Draville said coldly. "Marlo is not Earth's president. He's not their king. He's a weapon, and weapons can be broken." 3 parsecs away, Ren Marlo stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the jagged ice fields of Luna Forge. His breath hung in the cold air, eyes fixed on the facility below, a sprawling underground structure carved into the side of the moon's secondary ridge. This wasn't Earth. This was where humanity tested its ghosts. Inside the facility, dozens of captured alien technologies, confiscated during silent retrieval missions, were being dissected, repurposed, and if necessary, destroyed. But there was one project that concerned Ren more than any other: the Archangel frame. He walked through the security gates, past clearance scans, retinal locks, biometric blood taps, layers of paranoia that had kept Earth's most lethal secrets hidden for decades. Most Council spies didn't even know this place existed. Only a handful of men and women had access. Ren was one of them. Inside the final chamber, the Archangel frame stood tall, 8 meters of alloy, plated in a dark sheen that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Its chest glowed with a slow, ominous pulse. Omega drive fused directly into the armor. A human pilot could step inside it, become it, fight wars from within, and survive weapons that shredded battlecruisers. But it was untested. Too dangerous, too unstable, too human. Ren stood in front of it, jaw tight. His eyes scanned the diagnostics, flicking through readouts. Then he turned as a voice approached from behind. "You sure you want to light this match?" said Colonel Bishop, a grizzled tactician with a jaw full of metal and eyes like dried-out gravel. Ren didn't look back. "They're coming." "You don't know that." "They always come eventually." Bishop stepped beside him, arms crossed. "You rattled them. That's not the same as starting a war." "Isn't it?" Ren asked. "I stepped into their sanctum, humiliated them in front of every major species in the quadrant, showed them we crossed a rift they said was suicide. That kind of embarrassment doesn't get ignored." "So what's the plan?" Ren finally turned to face him. "We give them a taste of something worse." Meanwhile, the Council had already moved forward with their scalpel. They didn't send a fleet. They sent something quieter. A diplomatic ship, polished, unarmed, carrying a representative chosen not for his status, but for his gift. Ambassador Varel, an empath. His species didn't fight wars with weapons. They fought by unraveling minds, slipping inside memories, exposing fears, turning brothers into enemies with a single whispered phrase. His job was to land on Earth, extend peace, learn what he could, and break Ren Marlo from the inside out. Ren met him on neutral ground, an artificial habitat built over the Atlantic Trench, surrounded by storm shields and surveillance dampeners. No reporters, no diplomats, just 2 men, 1 human, 1 alien, sitting across a steel table. Varel smiled in that slow, unnatural way his kind did. "I must admit, you're not what I expected." Ren's face didn't move. "Good." Varel folded his hands. "The Council isn't seeking war. We want partnership, understanding, coexistence." Lies are a poor opening strategy. Varel's smile widened. "Then I'll be honest. We fear you. You're unpredictable, brutal, savage." Ren leaned forward. "And yet you're here, alone, in human territory, knowing damn well I could snap your neck and toss you into the sea." "Because you won't," Varel said. "You sure?" Varel didn't answer. He closed his eyes instead and entered. Ren felt it, like cold hands brushing against his thoughts. Not mind reading. Worse, feeling. His pain, his rage, his memories. His brother dying in his arms. His mother's last words before the plague took her. His first kill. The faces of the people he couldn't save. Varel's expression changed. He wasn't smiling now. "My God," he whispered. Ren stood slowly, the steel chair creaking beneath him. "You see it, don't you? What we really are." Varel looked up, voice trembling. "You've survived things that would shatter most species." Ren stared down at him. "We didn't survive. We adapted. We made our pain useful. You think we're unstable? We weaponized grief. We breed fury. We don't collapse. We climb." Varel stood abruptly, breathing uneven. You're a threat to galactic order." "No," Ren said, stepping closer. "We're the correction." Varel left that day with his head down, and his thoughts silent. When he reported back to the council, he gave no speech, just a single statement. "They're not ready for war." Draville leaned forward. "You mean they're not prepared?" Varel looked him dead in the eye. "We're not." Earth wasn't waiting anymore. The Archangel frame was activated, the Omega core was tuned, and Ren was already back in the Dauntless, punching coordinates for a recon jump into forbidden space. He wasn't after intel. He was after leverage. Rumors had surfaced about a lost station. Council-built, long abandoned, drifting in a radiation zone just outside the Veiled Belt. They said it housed records of war crimes, bioweapons, forbidden tech, all sealed after the Skarn uprising a century ago. Ren wanted it, because the only thing more dangerous than a human with nothing to lose was a human who knew what you were hiding. Space doesn't scream. It watches. And as the Dauntless coasted into the black zone beyond the Veiled Belt, every sensor on board warned Ren the same thing. This place wasn't abandoned. It was exiled. The Veiled Belt wasn't on most maps anymore. It had been redacted, renamed, rewritten. All official documents called it a resource-depleted anomaly sector. But Ren had seen enough war zones to know a sanitized lie when he heard one. He tapped the nav screen, scanning the rotting wreckage drifting past. Broken satellites, shredded war drones, the hollow shells of old carriers, all of it slowly circling the same dead point like vultures around a corpse. And at the center? A station the size of a small city, Council Class 9 Archive and Biotech Containment Hub. Ethra, buried, forgotten, and sealed behind a no-fly warning so aggressive it would trigger automatic missile lockdown if triggered by any council ship. Good thing the Dauntless wasn't a council ship. Ren eased the controls forward, driving the Omega drive into half-phase. The ship shimmered, slipping between solid and subspace, just long enough to slide through the debris ring without triggering any ancient defense protocols. The council wanted this place to stay buried, which meant it was exactly where Ren wanted to be. Inside, the Ethra station was silent. Not dead, not disabled. Silent. Lights flickered in low-power mode. Gravity was minimal. Most of the interior looked untouched by time, preserved by shielding that still hummed under the strain of 100 years. Ren stepped through the docking seal with his weapon at the ready. The station's automated system scanned him once, then twice. No lockdown, no alarm. Just a whisper of power, like something had been waiting for a human signature, which meant someone had been here before. Or worse, someone expected him now. The first sector he entered was clean. Sterile halls lined with containment pods and sealed medical archives. Names in alien scripts, species types, biohazard warnings in glowing red lines. Ren moved slow, eyes scanning each room. This wasn't a hospital. It was a lab. And it hadn't just been built to study, it had been built to experiment. He passed a chamber full of what looked like artificial wombs, some broken open, others still sealed. Inside, deformed humanoid shapes floated in suspended animation, some with twisted limbs, some with too many eyes, some barely formed at all. Not human, but close. The logs confirmed it. Xeno-human hybrid program, Operation Breach Wall. Terminated year 5127. Ren stared at the data. This wasn't just a lab. It was the Council's first attempt at creating a crossbred species, mixing human resilience with Council-engineered obedience, the kind of thing Earth never knew about. Until now. He kept moving. Sector by sector he found more. Experimental weapon systems, neural override chips, soul-mapping tech that could transfer memories between hosts. It was war science, made during a time the Council swore was peaceful. And then he found the core room, a black vault, sealed with 12 levels of clearance. Ren placed his hand on the pad. The screen blinked. Processed. Access granted. He stared. That wasn't possible. He wasn't in the system. No Earth citizen should be recognized here. Unless his DNA was already cataloged. Unless they had him on file. He stepped into the vault and stopped cold. It was a prison. 6 holding tanks lined the walls, each surrounded by force fields so dense they shimmered like glass dipped in oil. Inside each one, a single being floated, suspended in stasis, breathing, alive. They weren't fully alien, but they weren't human either. Tall, muscular, with strange bone ridges, half-formed wings, dark hair, and jagged implants along their spines. Ren walked closer to the center console. Project Echo. Human Warborn Initiative. These weren't weapons, they were soldiers. Soldiers made from his species. Failed prototypes, test subjects, discarded. But one of them wasn't asleep. Ren froze as the figure in tank number 3 opened his eyes. Pale blue, burning with something that wasn't quite rage, but something older, deeper, recognition. The thing locked eyes with him and moved forward, pressing a hand to the glass. Ren raised his pistol, heart hammering. The console beeped. Subject identified. Echo 03 genetic match, 72.4%. Ren Marlo. He staggered back. That wasn't just a hybrid. It was cloned from him. Ren didn't know how long he stood there. He didn't speak, didn't breathe, just stared at the face of a thing that wore parts of him like armor. And then it spoke. Its mouth didn't move, but its voice hit directly in his head. They made me from your ruin. Ren's hand tightened around the pistol. You speak English? I speak what you think. Why? Because I was built to kill what you are. Ren took a step forward. And what exactly am I? The creature's lips curled in something close to a smile, but it wasn't kind. It was hungry. A mistake. Suddenly, alarms blared. Ren turned, gun up. The station shook. Something had entered the outer field. Council ships. He'd been followed. Back in orbit, 3 cloaked interceptors decloaked in perfect formation. No insignia. No standard broadcast frequencies. Just raw black metal and council signature suppression drives humming like jackals ready to pounce. On the lead ship, Draville's personal assassins watched the station through wide-view scanners. Confirm presence, the commander ordered. Dauntless is docked, human biosigns inside, no other activity. The commander nodded once. Seal it. Inside, Ren watched as the access corridor sealed itself with thick blast doors. He checked his comms. Jammed. Omega drive. Dampened. Escape. 0. He looked back at Echo 03. Tell me how to kill them. The thing in the tank smiled wider now. Let me out. Ren hesitated. This thing was dangerous. Unstable. Part him, part weapon. It might be worse than whatever was coming. But Ren wasn't stupid. He knew when the rules had changed. He slammed his palm on the release switch. The tank hissed. Pressure dropped. The fluid drained. Echo 03 stepped out, steam rising from its skin. It didn't fall. It didn't stagger. It marched. Ren handed him a weapon. Standard human plasma rifle. The hybrid held it for a second, then tossed it aside. I have better. It flexed its hands. Long, curved blades slid out from under its wrists. Biometal, fused into the bone. Ren nodded. Guess we're doing this old school. The ground shook again. Council troops were inbound. Ren turned to face the entrance. Let's see if they're ready for the thing they built in secret. Echo 03 laughed. A deep, gravelly sound that sounded almost human. Almost. Above, the council commander watched the station light up. Fire protocol? One of the officers asked. The commander hesitated. His orders were to retrieve the Marlo clone, eliminate the human, erase the data. But even now, even at this distance, something didn't feel right. The station shouldn't still have power, the clone shouldn't be awake, and Earth never should have known. He turned toward the glass and saw it. A single light on the station, flashing in Morse code. Ren's signature. "You buried the wrong thing." The doors blew inward with a hiss of searing heat and scorched alloy. Council shock troops poured through in perfect formation. Silent, fast, armed with grav-sling rifles and neural disruptors tuned specifically for human biology. No warning, no demands, just extermination. Ren Marlo dove sideways as the first volley of energy pulses lanced through the corridor, melting the edges of the containment glass he'd just been standing near. Echo 03 didn't move like a man under fire. He moved like something born inside it. The hybrid launched forward, spinning through the air like a blade with bones. The first council trooper didn't even get a shot off. His head twisted sideways as Echo's wrist blade tore through his helmet like it was paper. Ren rolled into cover, dropped a magnetic charge behind the supply crate, and came up firing. 2 rounds struck a trooper center mass. The armor flared, absorbed the impact, until the 3rd shot found the soft seam at the neck. Down he went. Another trooper flanked from the side, tall, 4-limbed, one of the Grolock enforcers. It took Echo 3 seconds to get on its back and drive a blade straight through the skull. Ren kept his fire disciplined, controlled, no panic. Every move he made was calculated, measured. But Echo? Echo was a storm. They moved like they'd done this before, Ren covering the back, Echo clearing the front. The 2 of them retreated deeper into the station, guiding the fight away from the entrance corridor and toward the central reactor. The only place they might have a shot at turning this around. "You ever shut up?" Ren asked, ducking another pulse blast. "I was grown in silence," Echo replied calmly, yanking a dead trooper's weapon and flipping it backward into Ren's hands. "Lucky you," Ren muttered. More enemies dropped in from the ceiling ducts. Standard kill swarm tactic. Ren lobbed an overcharged grenade, turned his head as it detonated, and the blast sucked the air out of the chamber for 3 seconds straight. Silence. Burning metal. Smoking walls. Echo stepped forward, wiping blood from his jaw. They underestimated us again. Ren adjusted the grip on his rifle. "Good. Let's make sure they regret it." Outside the station, the lead council ship began a slow drift into position for orbital strike. The commander on board stared at the visual feed in frustration. The station had gone dark again. Internal sensors offline, weapon systems dormant. And yet, no sign of target confirmation. "Should we vaporize it?" his second-in-command asked. "No," the commander growled. "Retrieve the clone. The human is secondary." "But do it!" Inside, Ren and Echo reached the core chamber, and that's when Ren saw something he hadn't expected. It wasn't a reactor. It was a vault. Built into the bones of the station, wrapped in layers of security. Its doors glowed with power that wasn't council-made. The energy signature coming off it was older. Echo walked ahead, touching the surface of the vault. His expression shifted for the first time. Not rage, not pride, recognition. "They didn't build this," Echo said quietly. Ren stepped up beside him. "What do you mean?" "This place, this vault, it's ours." Ren froze. "Earth's. Older than Earth, but tied to it. Our DNA responds to this, not theirs. That's why they needed us. That's why they made me." Ren looked at the glowing door. "You think you can open it?" Echo didn't answer. He just placed his hand flat against the vault's surface, and it responded. The metal shifted, folding in on itself, opening with a low groan like the station was waking up from a 1,000-year sleep. Inside was a chamber filled with artifacts, ancient ones, symbols Ren didn't recognize carved into the walls, holographic memory blocks still pulsing with weak power. A pedestal in the center holding a device, small, dark, sharp-edged. It looked like a shard of something broken off something far bigger. Echo stared at it like it was holy. Ren looked at the walls again. The carvings weren't random. They showed humans, or at least something almost human, battling other races, falling, rising, over and over again, a cycle. Ren stepped closer to the device. "What is this?" Echo whispered. "The memory of the First War, the one they buried." Ren activated the shard. It flared, once, and then the holograms erupted. The entire chamber came alive. Images flashed across the walls, planets burning, fleets of ships battling across light years, a council, not the current one, but a primitive version begging for surrender. And at the heart of it all, humanity, not modern humans, ancient humans, more advanced, ruthless, leading the charge in a war that broke entire systems. Ren stared. They weren't the new species the council claimed. They were the returning ones. And they'd been wiped out, not by extinction, but by a betrayal. The council hadn't discovered humanity. They'd destroyed it, or tried to, and Earth had forgotten. Until now. Ren turned away from the hologram, breathing hard. Echo was silent, staring at the flickering lights like he was watching memories he'd never been allowed to have. Ren finally broke the silence. "This is it. This is our weapon." "It's more than that," Echo said. "It's proof, history. They've been lying to every race in the galaxy for centuries." Ren looked at the shard. "Then we're taking it home." The station shook again. They were out of time. Ren and Echo sprinted back toward the docking corridor, vaulting over rubble and bodies. The shard was locked into Ren's armor, protected behind multiple fail-safes. He wasn't leaving without it. Council reinforcements were landing in waves now, trying to box them in. Didn't matter. Dauntless was already cycling up. Ren's AI, Vera, had locked onto his biometrics and triggered remote wake-up. "Clear a path," Ren shouted. Echo didn't answer. He was already moving. Outside, the council commander finally lost patience. "Fire. Now." The ship's weapons powered up, 8 fusion rails aligning for a full-force pulse designed to vaporize the station in one hit. But just as the targeting system locked in, the Dauntless exploded from the underbelly of the wreck, its Omega drive flashing red-hot as it tore through the void. Ren and Echo had made it. "Chase them!" the commander shouted. Too late. The drive ignited. The human ship vanished in a burst of warped space and shattered tracking beacons. Back on Earth, in the depths of the Arctic Command Center, alarms triggered. Dauntless has returned. The hangar bay doors split open as the ship landed hard, steam hissing from every crack. Ren came out first, scarred, burnt, still standing. Behind him, Echo followed, silent as death. And in Ren's hand, the shard. The war had already begun. The council just didn't know it yet. There was no ceremony when Ren Marlo returned. No press, no medals, no parade. Just the silence of deep concrete and humming steel, and the eyes of military brass staring at the ancient shard locked in the containment core. It pulsed slowly now, deep red light beating like a second heart in the room. A piece of history too dangerous to leave buried. Colonel Bishop was the first to speak. "You sure it's real?" Ren didn't answer with words. He tapped the side of his wrist console and uploaded the data stream extracted from Ethra station. Visual records, coded language maps, historical event markers. Dozens of files that all pointed to one thing. Humanity hadn't been discovered. They'd been erased. and the council had known the whole time. One general in the back of the war table muttered, "My God, we're not the underdogs. We're the ghosts they tried to kill off." Ren just nodded. "And now they're scared we remember." The room went quiet. The revelation hit them all differently. Some saw it as proof of purpose, others as a warning. But one thing was clear. There was no going back. The next step was bold, reckless, some called it, but necessary. Ren ordered the full truth broadcast to every open channel across the known star systems. Not a hidden leak, not a backdoor hack, but an open, deliberate transmission, cutting through council firewalls, smashing propaganda nets, hijacking media towers on hundreds of worlds. The message was raw. No music, no editing, just Ren Marlo, standing in front of the relic shard with the holograms playing behind him, flickering images of humanity's ancient war, council betrayal, and the truth they'd hidden. Ren's voice cut through every feed. "To the galaxy. You were told humans were new, dangerous, primitive. You were lied to. We are not the new threat. We are the old mistake they tried to bury." He let the silence hang before continuing. "The council says we should join them, sit at their table, but that table is built on blood, ours. We don't want revenge, we want truth, and we will not kneel to those who tried to erase our past." The feed ended, and the galaxy went mad. It started small. On a backwater mining colony called Tarnus 7, 2 council security officers were ambushed and beaten unconscious by local workers, humans and aliens both. On Gralian Prime, a council historian went on record confirming parts of Ren's transmission matched redacted records locked away since before her birth. On Keln Axis, thousands of protesters marched on the local council outpost, demanding investigations, demanding confessions. The council tried to contain it, scrubbed feeds, declared the message a deep fake, blamed rogue elements. It didn't matter, because the damage was done. They'd spent centuries building the illusion of order, and now one human had lit a match. In the depths of the council core world, High Chancellor Draville smashed a data tablet against the wall of his chamber. "He broadcast classified history," he hissed. "This is a declaration of war." His advisors stood in stunned silence, not because they disagreed, but because they knew the worst part was true. The relic was real, and the vault at Ethra had always been the council's greatest shame. "We must erase him," Draville growled. "Erase Earth. End this before the infection spreads." A soft voice answered from the corner of the room. "You already tried that. 1,000 years ago. You failed." Everyone turned. Varel, the empath. He looked older now, not physically, but hollow, like touching Ren Marlo's mind had scorched something inside him that hadn't healed. "You saw it?" Draville asked. "You felt what he is?" Varel nodded slowly. "He's not just a soldier. He's not just angry. He's remembrance, Chancellor. He carries the weight of everything we buried, and now he's dragging it to light." Draville hissed. "Then we'll crush him under that weight." Varel's voice dropped. "You better pray the rest of his kind don't remember too." Back on Earth, the fallout from the broadcast hit fast and hard. Several fringe worlds under Earth's influence openly declared independence from council governance. Supply lines snapped. Trade alliances cracked. A few races began quietly reaching out, not to condemn, but to talk. Earth wasn't just a rogue planet now. It was a symbol. Ren stood in the Arctic Command War Room, watching the red dot signals flash across the galaxy. Protests, blockades, blackouts, quiet coups. They weren't winning a war. They were breaking the silence, and silence had always been the Council's best weapon. Colonel Bishop walked in, tossing him a datapad. "They're scared." Ren glanced at the screen. It showed troop repositioning across Council border zones. A dozen capital ships moved from ceremonial positions into active stances. "They should be," Ren said. "You think they'll hit us next?" "They don't have a choice now. The lie's too big. The only way to protect it is to burn the truth down." Bishop paused. "You ready for that?" Ren looked him in the eye. "I've always been ready." Later that night, Ren stood alone on the roof of the compound, cold wind scraping against his skin. Echo 03 joined him, silent, watching the stars. "You knew the shard would do this," Ren said. Echo nodded. "It's what I was grown for." "Why tell me now?" "Because you're the only one who still chooses." Ren frowned. "Chooses what?" Echo turned toward him, voice low. "To fight for something real." Ren didn't respond, because he knew what was coming next. Not diplomacy, not alliances. War. The Council moved first. 3 stealth fleets launched under the veil of a humanitarian escort mission. They targeted Earth's outposts, one on the Martian industrial belt, another near the orbit of Saturn's moons, and the third, most dangerously, near Eden's edge, the human colony closest to Council territory. The goal wasn't conquest, it was sabotage, disruption, fear. But humanity had learned long ago how to handle fear. They didn't run. They responded. The first attack didn't go as planned. A Council battleship decloaked near the Martian refinery, expecting minimal defense. Instead, it ran headfirst into a railgun cannon fused from retrofitted alien parts, designed by human engineers with nothing to lose and revenge in their blood. The ship didn't just fall, it shattered, broadcasting its death scream across multiple systems. The Second Fleet suffered EMP counterattacks, viral codes, space mines left in the orbits of dead moons. And the third? It never even made it. A shadow fleet, Earth's secret defense corps, intercepted it using Black Omega tech. A full Council cruiser disappeared from space in under 18 seconds. No survivors. Ren Marlo didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. He just kept moving. Planning. Because these were just opening shots, probes, and the real war hadn't started yet. But when it did, Earth wouldn't fight alone. Across the stars, more races were listening now. Some quietly, some with clenched fists and loaded rifles, and some with hope. The war didn't start with declarations. It started with screams. One after another, Earth's outer listening stations blinked out. No signal, no distress call, just dead silence. Ships that had been on patrol routes for months went offline in seconds. Surveillance satellites drifted without guidance, spinning in the black void like severed eyes. And then came the skyfall. It began above Eden's edge. 6 massive Council dreadnoughts broke orbit and opened fire without a word. No warning, no mercy. The sky turned red as the colony's shield dome struggled against the onslaught. It lasted 13 minutes, then it failed. The colony didn't stand a chance. Towers crumbled. Thousands died in their sleep, burned alive or flattened under collapsing atmospheres. The ones who survived didn't pray. They screamed, and that scream was heard all the way back on Earth. Ren Marlo stood in the Arctic Command Center, watching the live feed flicker in static. 1 second, the planet was there. The next, gone. Not because of annihilation, because of jamming. The Council didn't want Earth to know what they were doing. But they'd underestimated one thing. Earth wasn't blind. Ren's team had placed deep-layered sensor nets across the fringe of every sector they ever touched, built by paranoid engineers and cold bastards who never believed in peace. So when the sky fell, Ren saw it, the destruction, the exact ship classes, the Council insignia glowing in the dark. They weren't hiding anymore, and neither would he. Ren turned to Colonel Bishop, voice flat. Eden's edge is gone. They just wiped 20,000 people off the map. Bishop's face was stone. And they didn't even try to hide it. Ren nodded. Then let's return the favor. Within hours, Earth's war engine was in full motion. Factories that had been silent for decades roared back to life. Civilian ports were converted into launch stations. Underground vaults opened, revealing weapons built in secret. Tools designed to break ships apart from the inside. Coded viruses for alien AI systems. Stealth mines that could live dormant for years. But even with all that, they were still outnumbered. Earth had its strength, its anger, its memory, but the Council had an empire. And unless Ren found allies, fast, this war would become a slow, brutal extermination. So he did something unthinkable. He reached out to the fractured worlds, the slums of the galaxy, border planets full of exiled species, genetic deviants, merchant warriors who swore no allegiance. Once labeled unfit for Council integration, now left to rot in lawless sectors, places like Core 17, a mining rock where exosuited brutes fought over metal scraps, or Vale Station, home to smugglers, bounty hunters, and at least 3 different cannibal sects. Ren didn't go with a fleet. He went alone, because he wasn't there to beg. He was there to remind them who they were. On Vale Station, the air tasted like ash and copper. Bodies hung from old support beams, warnings or trophies. It was hard to tell. Alien gangs clustered in every corner, each armed to the teeth and suspicious of anything that breathed. Ren walked through them like smoke. They knew who he was. The broadcast had reached even the lowest places in the galaxy. And while some still believed the Council's version of the story, most didn't trust them either, because they'd been lied to, too. Ren stepped into the center of the open market and dropped a Council-issued datapad. It played automatically. Footage of the Eden's Edge massacre. Screams. Fire. Council ships hovering above. Then Ren's voice. "You think they won't come for you next? You think hiding here keeps you safe? You're not safe. You're just last on the list." He didn't preach, didn't yell. He just looked around, eye to eye, with some of the most dangerous killers this side of the Orion Veil. "You fight for coin, for pride, for blood. I'm offering something else." One of the gang leaders laughed, a 4-armed brute with a rusted respirator and a jagged vibro axe across his back. "What's in it for us, human?" Ren didn't smile. He reached into his bag and tossed something on the ground. The severed head of a Council commander, still leaking blue blood. "I'm giving you a war that finally matters." It worked. Not all of them, but enough. By the time Ren returned to Earth, he wasn't alone. Small fleets followed, patched-up junkers with modified alien tech, fighters who didn't wear uniforms but carried scars that spoke louder than medals, pirates, outcasts, ex-Council assassins. They didn't come for peace. They came for revenge. Back on Earth, the Council's second wave arrived. This time it wasn't surgical. It was invasion. 4 capital ships entered the solar system from the edge of Saturn's rings. They brought with them a support fleet. Dozens of carriers, armored drop pods, atmospheric splitters designed to crack defensive shields. They didn't expect resistance that soon. They were wrong. Ren was already waiting. The Battle of Saturn's shadow began with silence. Earth's fleet didn't rush in. They waited, behind the shadows of Saturn's moons, using cold space cloaking systems the Council still believed were experimental. When the Council reached strike distance, the first salvo came from beneath them. 2 stealth destroyers rose from the ice surface of Enceladus and launched kinetic lances straight through the enemy carrier's hull. No energy signals, no heat, just pure, raw mass moving at impossible speed. The carrier cracked in half. That was the opening signal. The rest of Earth's fleet decloaked all at once. Black ships with glowing red Omega cores, alien mercenary gunships armed with Council-forbidden tech. And in the middle of it all, the Dauntless. Ren stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the Council command vessel. "Target their flagship," he said. Vera, the ship's AI, responded with a calm tone. "Flagship locked. Then let's remind them who we are." The battle was pure chaos. Council fighters swarmed, deploying boarding pods and signal jammers. But Earth's fleet fought dirty. They used gravity spikes, internal virus storms, hull disruptors. Even some of the outcasts used old suicidal tactics, ramming Council cruisers with rigged fuel cells that exploded in massive bursts of electromagnetic rage. Ren personally led a boarding run on the flagship, taking a strike team straight into the command deck. It wasn't clean. He came out soaked in blood. Some of it his, most of it not. By the time the battle ended, half of Saturn's upper orbit was a debris field. But Earth held the system. And the Council? They ran. Ren returned to Earth, bruised but alive. The cost had been high, thousands dead, ships lost. But they'd won. And now the entire galaxy knew it. Ren stood once again before the war room table. This time, surrounded by humans and aliens, races that had once fought each other now stood together, not because they were friends, but because they all saw the same truth. The Council didn't rule by peace. They ruled by silence. And that silence was over. The heart of the Council wasn't a fortress. It was a lie built out of gold. Genvar, the core world capital, glittered in orbit above a star that had long since been drained to power its defense grid. Tall towers reached toward artificial light, surrounded by rings of ceremonial ships and illusionary banners preaching unity, balance, peace. But behind all that shine were bunkers full of weapons, black sites under polished temples, memory cages buried beneath libraries. And now, Earth was coming for it. Ren Marlo stood in the command deck of the Dauntless, staring at the enemy planet through reinforced view glass. He wasn't angry. He was done. Done being hunted. Done watching colonies burn. Done carrying the burden of history on his back while the galaxy pretended Earth was nothing but an accidental mistake. Behind him, a fleet of Earth-built ships, alien mercenary cruisers, and defected Council vessels hovered in tight formation. Unlikely allies brought together by rage, loss, and the undeniable clarity of betrayal. Ren turned to Vera, the ship's AI. "Start the burn. Final approach," she responded without hesitation. "Burn initiated. Estimated engagement in 9 minutes." Outside the view glass, the Omega drive activated. Engines screamed in silence. The fleet moved. No more warnings. No more negotiations. This was judgment. On Genvar, panic was already spreading. Draville paced inside the High Council chamber, claws twitching. His golden robe was gone. Armor replaced it now. Functional. Brutal. The kind worn when ceremony gave way to war. "They've crossed into our inner perimeter," a subordinate barked. "I can see that," Draville snarled. Across from him, Virel stood motionless, watching the hologram of the approaching fleet like a man reading a eulogy he'd written years ago. "They know," Draville said. "The whole galaxy knows." Virel finally nodded. "Then the lie is dead." Draville's voice rose. "We are the architects of peace. We kept this galaxy from tearing itself apart for 1,000 years. "No," Virel said softly. "You kept it quiet. That's not the same." Draville stepped close. "And what would you have us do now? Surrender to primitives? Let them burn everything we built?" Virel didn't flinch. "Maybe it deserves to burn." The skies over Genvar split as Earth's fleet descended. Atmospheric disruptors roared to life. Anti-orbital cannons rained energy blasts upward. The golden illusion of peace cracked under fire and steel. Ren didn't send fighters in waves. He sent hammers. Suicide drones made from scrap metal and hacked AI cores led the assault. They weren't meant to win dogfights. They were meant to crash into the defense grid and detonate. And they did. Whole districts went dark. Palace towers crumbled. And the ceremonial fleet? Gone in the first 5 minutes. The real war began when Ren's ground forces landed. Ren touched down in the middle of the Council Hall of Judgment, the same chamber where he'd once stood alone, warning them. This time, he didn't come alone. He marched through the breach with Echo 03 beside him, flanked by mercenaries from Vial Station, human special forces, and a captured council guard who now fought under Earth's flag. The hall was already scarred, columns shattered, banners burned. But Draville still stood at the center, surrounded by the last of the royal enforcers. "You think this is victory?" Draville spat. Ren didn't answer. He just stepped forward and tossed something on the floor. The shard. The ancient fragment from Ethra. It hit the marble with a cold, metallic clink, then flared to life. Images projected across the broken ceiling, showing the ancient war, humanity's betrayal, the truth the Council had buried for centuries. And now? Now the whole world could see it. Even Draville flinched at the clarity. Ren finally spoke. "You didn't just lie. You rewrote the species we are. You tried to erase us because you feared what we might become again." Draville hissed. "You were conquerors, violent, reckless, a mistake of evolution." Ren stepped closer. "Maybe, but we weren't yours to rewrite." "You don't deserve this galaxy," Draville growled. Ren leveled his eyes. "Then stop me." Silence. Draville stepped forward, then reached for his weapon. But Echo 03 was already moving. The clone drove his blade through Draville's chest before the Chancellor could draw. He whispered, "This is for the ones you called failed experiments," and let Draville fall. The war didn't end with that death. It ended with a transmission. Ren stood atop the broken steps of the council chamber, surrounded by smoke and silence, and broadcast one final message across every channel the galaxy could hear. To every species living under a lie. You were told peace meant obedience. You were told history was a gift, not a weapon. You were told humanity was new, dangerous, unstable. You were told wrong. The screen flickered to his face. "We're not here to replace you. We're not here to rule you, but we won't be erased again. From this moment forward, Earth stands free, and any world that wants to break its chains, stand with us." The message sent shockwaves. Systems fell into chaos. Some council worlds revolted from within. Others opened negotiations with Earth, terrified of retaliation. But most importantly, the myth was broken. And myths, once shattered, don't come back. Weeks later, Ren Marlo walked through the ruins of Genvar, quiet for the first time in months. Reconstruction drones buzzed above him. Alien engineers worked side by side with humans to rebuild, not a throne, but a court, a place to hold the corrupt accountable, to show the galaxy something new. Echo 03 walked beside him. Still silent, still watchful. Ren looked at him. "You ever wonder if we did the right thing?" Echo stared ahead. "I don't think we were built for peace." "Maybe not," Ren said, "but maybe we're built for truth." Echo nodded once. "That'll have to be enough." They walked on, two broken reflections of a species that refused to die. And above them the stars blinked quietly, not in fear, but in warning, because now the galaxy remembered. And humanity was ready.